for science. When you visit, give yourself plenty of time to explore the exhibits and try out all the hands-on activities they offer. And don't forget to snap a picture and post it using #AmbersAlabama. With coverage you can count on, I'm Amber Killough, WAAY 31 News.
All right, well, speaking of pest control, Alabama exterminated Wisconsin on Saturday. So where did that leave them in the latest AP poll?
Now, WAAY 31 Sports with Trevor Denton.
What's up, North Alabama? The Crimson Tide seemed to thrive on playing that villain role this weekend during Wisconsin's jump around tradition during the fourth quarter. It was Alabama doing the singing and dancing while the Badgers were subdued on their sideline. That kind of just sums up how this game went. The Tide wanted to take the air out of Camp Randall Stadium, and in the slightly edited words of receiver Jeremy Bernard, they wanted to shut that weak jump song down. They also shut down Wisconsin's offense, giving up just 10 points and handing the Badgers their worst loss at home since 2008. So yeah, you can definitely say Kalen DeBoer's first road trip with the Tide went according to plan.
There was a business-like approach to us in the locker room pregame. There was a lot of energy, a lot of fire. I think that's just these guys and their passion. It's impressive being in here, and it's impressive at halftime as you're gaining the momentum that they can just really have that confidence, the energy being sustained. It's something I'm really learning about our guys.
With the emphatic win, Alabama remains at 4th in the AP poll. Texas takes away the #1 spot from Georgia, who the Tide will meet in just 2 weeks. Banner day for the deep group of Alabama running backs in the NFL. Brian Robinson sets a career high with 133 yards for the Commanders. Josh Jacobs also looks strong for Green Bay, toting the rock for 151 yards in his best game in a couple years. Derrick Henry doing King Henry things, scoring a touchdown for the Ravens, and then Jahmyr Gibbs finished with over 100 total yards from scrimmage for the Lions. After Saturday, Auburn is hoping Hank Brown can be the team's long-term answer at quarterback. The redshirt freshman threw for 235 yards and 4 touchdowns against New Mexico. Hugh Freeze confirmed that he'll be the starter when the Tigers meet Arkansas in their SEC opener, but he also didn't rule out the possibility of Peyton Thorne getting the job back at some point this season. The Titans fall to 0-2 today with a 24-17 loss to the Jets. Braylon Allen scored the go-ahead touchdown with 4:31 left. Tennessee quarterback Will Levis showed some flashes today, but he did turn it over on back-to-back possessions in the first half. Talk about an anticlimactic end to a season. The Trash Pandas' final game against Chattanooga got rained out today, so Rocket City wraps up the year with a 61-75 record. Still, some of the team's best players do get to keep on playing. Caden Dana making his 3rd career start for the Los Angeles Angels. He struck out 3 Astros in the first 3 innings today, but then in the 3rd, the wily vet gets the better of him with Jason Hayward sending a home run 410 feet. Dana would get pulled in the 4th. Another Panda had a much more successful day. Eric Wagaman going 2 for 4 with 2 doubles in his best day in the bigs. Then you also had Rocket City's hitter of the year, Gustavo Campero, making his debut in the show, and he makes an immediate impact, driving in a run in the bottom 9th. The Angels do go on to lose this one 6-4. Buckle up for a wild game in Metro Atlanta. Huntsville City FC taking on ATL United 2, and they score 4 goals in the first half, with Wubens Passius finding the net twice before the break, but comebacks can happen in the MLS Next Pro, and Atlanta would go on to score 3 unanswered to make it a 1-goal game in the 81st minute. But instead of parking the bus, Huntsville decides the best defense is offense. They add to their lead in the 85th minute, and then right before the game ended, Passius completes the hat trick with the penalty goal. A 6-3 win for HCFC, and one of the higher scoring games you're ever going to see. We'll be right back.
Look, no rain tomorrow, it looks like.
Oh yeah, we're finally starting to dry out as we head into the week. So some great news there. Here's what you're looking at for your Monday. Temperatures will be in the 80s. No rain in sight for the next few days. Low end rain chances return to the forecast as we head towards the end of next weekend, but stay in the 80s all the way through the next 10 days.
All right, Amber, Trevor, thank you so much. WAAY 31, we give you 24/7 coverage. You can count on local news, breaking news, and severe weather.
Watch WAAY 31 on all our streaming platforms and download the only weather app with 3 live Doppler radars. Don't go anywhere. 31 Law Call is next.
This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Good evening and welcome to WAAY 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Doviet. Tonight we're taking your calls and questions all about family law, so divorce, child custody. If you're going through that or you're thinking about it and you have questions, call in. The 31 Law Call number 256-536-0077. You can also now text to that same number if you're a little shy or you don't want your ex or your current to hear your questions. You can also email a question any day of the week. You can send it to lawcall@waytv.com. And when we get to a show that's on point, we'll pull some of those out. And we've got some of your email questions tonight. Getting us started tonight, Will League is here from Timberlake League and Brooks. You guys do personal injury cases.
Sharon, we're talking about, I won't say it's your favorite topic, but it's your
It's
topic
my
you
topic.
practice in.
Yeah,
so
it is.
it's your expertise.
Yes.
So maybe not your favorite.
Well, it's always exciting. People come into my office and I say, please tell me when I haven't heard. Tell me something new.
That's
We've
right.
heard it
That's
all.
right. Y'all in y'all's world, it's so difficult. We got divorce, child custody. Who gets the children? Who's paying child support? What happens if he or she doesn't pay child support? So if you're mad at your ex or mad at your ex's significant other, have questions. We had experts tonight to talk about that, how that relates into any personal injury world that we handle. We'll chime in on that as well. But if you got any questions, give us a buzz, 536-0077. We got a couple of experts here.
And you can also text to that number too. While they're locking in some phone calls, we always like to give you a video. You make the law call. We pull this off of YouTube. Well, something's about to happen here. So, didn't need that air conditioner at all, did we? We've got a couple of different views of this. It looks like this bridge is marked with the height and everything. When you look at this as a personal injury attorney, and what are you seeing? What are your questions with this?
You make the call. It looks like he blew it. I mean, there's clearly a sign that says 12-4. So average is 14 to 16 in the Department of Transportation, but state and local don't have to follow those regs. So it's on that driver to check that sign. 12 feet 4 inches. Know how high his rig is or her rig is, and if they're renting that, they're on the hook to get it paid. To get it repaired. Looks like it's a tow behind. Maybe they're renting, maybe they're not, but they got some damage and they may have to pay for any damage to the bridge if they cause that. So, you've got collision and liability. Collision would cover that if you have that type of coverage. That's my call. What do you think, Sharon? You think you blew it?
I think they forgot the air conditioner on top. I think they knew how tall it was, but then they've added something new. And
I agree.
Going to have some major repairs.
That's our call. Sharon, we got another expert in your world.
Yep.
We sure do. We've got Alexix Killough from Cove Family Law. Now, Alexix, you practice out of Hampton Cove, Alabama, but mostly all around North Alabama. Is that correct?
That's right. I am in Madison County, Limestone County, Morgan County, anywhere kind of in the general Huntsville metro, depending on where I'm needed.
Okay. And like me, you clerked for a circuit court judge for a few years before you went out into your private practice. Is that correct?
I did. I am one of the esteemed group of Judge Smith clerks. We're kind of a little bit of a posse up here in the Huntsville area, but I spent a couple of years with him learning the ins and outs of how a courtroom works and what it's actually like to be an attorney.
Yeah, wonderful learning tool. When you were in there, did you decide what type of law? Because you see all types of cases. What made you travel towards this area of the law?
Honestly, family law fell into my lap. I am of the group that had, career changes and life changes during COVID.
Right.
And a family law job fell into my lap, and it turns out I really enjoy it.
Okay.
And so I've stuck with it.
We talked about some of the things we wish people knew. People call and things that they assume they know. One of the things that family law attorneys get a lot of times, when can my child decide which household they want to live with? He just turned 12. Can he decide for himself?
Well, and you hit the nail on the head. If we had $1 for every time we get asked this in this practice, and there's no magic age, there's no magic number. The idea that A child can decide where they live is a common misconception. It's one we hear a lot, but it's not based in the law. A judge is going to look at the total factors surrounding where that child lives and who they live with, and a judge is going to make that decision. They may listen to the child, they may take that into account, but there's no point where the kid can say, I want to live with mom or I want to live with dad. It's always up to the judge.
And how that enters our world is oftentimes if, let's say, the child's injured in some way, medical malpractice, anything, and who gets to drive the lawsuit? Let's say, God forbid, it's a death. And so the custodial parent usually has the right to make that, because you have to set up an estate, and really the personal representative of the estate makes that claim for a death case. For an injury, the custodial parent. Now, my question for you guys is that the law or the judges shall, I believe, consider joint custody. Is that correct?
They are supposed to start with that. The current state is they should start with doing joint custody, and if they think that these parents can pull that off and cooperate and co-parent, then let's go with joint custody, and that is generally equal time. It may be week on, week off. It may be 2 days alternating weekends. That's what they try for. A lot of families just can't do it. A lot of divorcing people just can't make it happen.
Now, there's maybe social, religion, education, extracurricular activities, things like that that I've seen that are even in a joint scenario.
Right.
That one parent is always designated because oftentimes they cannot agree. Is that correct?
They don't want parents coming back, and they know that if they don't assign decision making, that's what you're talking about, that these folks are going to come right back. If we say you've got equal decision making, things won't get decided. So the areas he's talking about is parenting plan, right?
That's right. There are two kinds of custody that we talk about. There's the legal custody, which is what you are referring to. That's the who gets to decide what pediatrician the child sees, whether or not they get braces, what kind of church they go to, or if they're baptized. Those are the kind of legal decision-making powers that parents make. Usually those are divided and split into those categories. What most people think of as custody is what we call physical custody. That is, where is the child located? Who has the care, the physical custody and control of the child at any given time, which is also where we start with joint, but that's where most people, I think, run into problems, and it's not feasible for most people most of the time, I think, to maintain joint custody, because that requires a lot of working together for a divorced couple.
Well, obviously, it's best for the child, for both parents to be involved and engaged and feel part of the process and things like that. So I'm guessing that's why the law says, hey, let's at least consider that first before we start venturing for one parent or the other.
Unless a parent has really been terrible, both parents are going to be involved in this child's life. Even if one gets primary or sole custody and the other one is getting the standard visitation schedule, in Madison County, the standard visitation schedule is a lot of time. It's about 40% of the time. So even if you're only getting getting standard visitation, it's still going to be a lot of time. Both parents are going to be involved. We've got callers waiting. We've got Andrea with a question from Union Grove. Hi, Andrea. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
Me and my ex adopted a child, and I was taking care of my mother, and she had the job with the insurance and all that, so basically was adopted in her name, and I have no right to him. And is there anything that I can do to get any rights, because I'm the one that paid for the adoption?
Okay, so walk us through this again. So a child has been adopted, but basically it's your mom that adopted the child, is that right?
Oh no, my ex.
Sounds like she was taking care of her mother. Her and her ex adopted a child. You paid for it, but the paperwork was in your ex's name that you adopted a male child, correct?
Correct.
And because your name was on the paperwork, you don't have any actual visitation or rights to the child. Is that correct?
Well, my name's not on the paperwork. It was all done in her name because of the fact that she had the job with the insurance and all that. So everything was done in her name, but I'm the one that actually paid for everything.
Alexis, can you? I mean, because she paid for everything. I mean, does that get her anywhere, or does she have to be on that paperwork?
Chances are she's got to be on that paperwork. Without seeing it, it's hard to know exactly what the legal arrangement here was, but it sounds like if the adoption is complete, those are sealed and finalized pretty quickly thereafter. And absent a divorce or some action like that that would create a parental right or create a custody decision, I don't think she's likely to have any options to join or add in a parental right at this point. The law isn't usually concerned with who's paying for the action. The law is concerned with who's pursuing the action.
May I ask, was it a legal marriage? You guys, had your certificate and all that was set up?
No, at that time, it wasn't legal for us to marry. So, no.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask. So, in a situation like that, okay, so she wasn't on. She says because of the insurance. So, the other participant in the relationship had the job, had the insurance. It may, fly through customs a little better, for lack of a better word. They're married, but it's not a legal marriage. If it was a legal marriage, let me ask you this, Sharon, and Alexis, if it's a legal marriage, even though the other person adopted a child, you're married. I mean, I'm kind of thinking once you get divorced, you have certain rights, or if there's a death of a spouse, you have certain rights. Do any of those kick in?
So I think it's going to be like being a step parent, and a step parent just doesn't have any rights. You may have gone and done a lot for that child, but if you're not the parent and you split up with the parent, you don't have any rights to that child. I think that you're going to be in that kind of situation.
Absent some formal adoption or some sort of designation.
Unless
like
they
that.
came back and did another adoption to allow this second parent to adopt the child, I think you'd have some difficulties there.
All right, last question. I know I'm beating a dead horse, but what if you file for some type of visitation because you had access to this child? We talked about grandparents' visitation rights, which are really, really tough these days. Mm-hmm. She had access. I mean, can someone off the street, and I get it, she's off the street, file for visitation for this child and the judge evaluate that, or there's nothing?
She would have no standing to file that.
Yeah.
You have to have an established parental or familial right that's recognized under the law, and unfortunately, absent a step-parent adoption, a step-parent relationship, or I am dating a parent of a child that I've been very involved with, that just does not establish that right, so there is no standing. Mm-hmm. For better or for worse, there is no standing to file for custody in this situation.
If you got to the point where the parent who has adopted the child is an unfit parent, then anybody could come in and say they want custody of that child. But if it's a fit parent, I think we're in the same situation. It's like being a step parent, and once you split up, you don't have any rights to that child.
That's tough. That's tough.
Ann is on the line with a question from Coleman. Hi, Ann. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight? Hi, Ann from Coleman. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a handicapped child.
Okay.
And my ex was ordered to pay support past the age of 19. He has not paid. He had a gap there between him drawing on his check, then he didn't draw, and then he started drawing on his daddy. But I kept a log of the amount of support and interest. He is now over $200,000 behind.
Ooh, wow. Okay, so you had actual orders in place that said he was obligated to pay because it is a disabled child, a handicapped child, even beyond the age of 19. You had that order in place, and you still have that order in place, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It has not been released.
Okay, and that's very special.
That's a child support order,
it is,
correct?
and that's very special to
It
go
is.
beyond 19.
Yes,
Never
it's rare.
goes away.
No,
I'm talking about back child support payments that never
right.
go away.
That's right. At the end of every month that child support is not paid, that child support payment or the amount owed takes the form of a judgment at the end of every single month, which means it is due and owing and collectible at that point. So there are options to file for contempt. That is probably the most common method to enforce these orders. You go to the judge and say, hey, I have a court order and it wasn't followed. Judge, can you help me enforce it? Can you help me collect on it? And I mean, all the way up to jail time, there are options to enforce or collect on court orders. And for this, a custody order, a child support order at this point is no different than any other award that you would deal with as well.
Right. So it's okay. So I didn't realize. So each month, that's a separate order in itself, or contempt count.
Yes.
Okay.
Each month not paid is contempt. Each month not paid is judgment, and each month accrues its own interest.
Now, does DHR police that as well, or is it mostly your domestic attorney that you have?
So it depends on how the order was set up. Certain people have to pay through the state. And if they are paying through the state and through the child support office, then the state is tracking that, and the state often will help enforce it through DHR or through the prosecutor's office. If that is not paid through the state by the order, you usually need to speak with an attorney at least to get everything organized and to get set up into what that contempt will look like.
And they're telling us to take a break. We're going to come back and talk some more about collecting that money and what you can do on contempt. We'll take a break and be right back answering more questions about divorce and child custody.
You're watching WAAY 31 Law Call. Your rights, your calls, live. Presented by the Tennessee Valley's award-winning personal injury and wrongful death law firm, Timberlake, League & Brooks. Featuring the knowledge and experience of Attorney Michael Timberlake, Attorney Will League, Attorney Heath Brooks, Attorney William Maservi. And hosted by broadcaster and family law attorney Sharon Doviet.